it shook my world, and then it just got kind of a little bit worse sometimes every day. It just kind of goes like this.
Mood swings?
All the time.
Episodes of rage?
Yeah, mostly at myself.
Depression?
Yeah.
Anxiety?
I think that they kind of go hand in hand.
At 67 years old, Mike Adamle still has the body of an elite athlete. But look into his eyes and you can see something is wrong. First, his doctor said the epilepsy he has fought for 19 years was likely caused by football. And now?
He said we've seen some things that are sort of like concurrent with CTE.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease found in athletes. Symptoms like behavioral and mood disorders, aggression and depression, and struggles with executive functioning like organizing, managing your time. Mike has all of the above. Neuropsychological testing combined with significant changes shown in his brain scans taken just 7 years apart shocked his doctors. They believe CTE is the probable contributor, if not the only cause. Mike has dementia, the final stage of CTE.
Here's what happens. You come over, you could do an interview with you, and you'll leave and I'll say, oh God, who is that,
Neurodegenerative diseases like CTE can only be diagnosed post-mortem. The Concussion Legacy Foundation scientists have found it in 95% of NFL players' brains tested. Junior Seau, Andre Waters, Dave Duerson. They believe it is caused by significant brain trauma like hits to the head, and the risk increases the longer you play or the way you play.
Where's your helmet?
Right here.
This was Mike in the middle of the scrum, his helmet a few feet away. Don't ask him how many concussions he's suffered. He doesn't remember.
I was in the locker room and the reporters came up and said, hey, explain, tell me how you did the last, what happened on that play? And I said, what touchdown? I really didn't know. And you do black out.
Mike can no longer work. He cannot drive. He wears a fanny pack with his ID, house keys, and phone, just in case he gets lost or can't remember where he's going.
I'm great at taking the garbage out. I can take dishes out of the dishwasher and put them away.
How difficult is it for you to face this challenge the way you have faced so many other challenges that were physical challenges?
Well, the only way that I can extend, my life and be around to see my daughters get married and live happily ever after with your wife. I want to be able to do that.
Yeah, we're pretty damn lucky to live on a place like this. 75 miles from Chicago on historic Route 66, Gardner is the picture of small-town USA. Here at the local grade school, school spirit runs strong. But last year, during the 4th of July weekend when no one was around, malicious hackers hit the school hard. The target, school phone lines.
We're a public school. There's never been a time where we've made any phone calls to Bosnia or Ecuador or any other calls like that.
Superintendent Ron Harris says someone hijacked the school's phones and forwarded hundreds of calls to other countries, including Bosnia. By the time school officials discovered what had happened, cyber criminals had racked up nearly $8,000 in international calls. The school says it typically spends under $300 a month on local calls.
For us to have to pay this takes away from that pot of money that we can use to provide those services for our kids.
Records show most calls were made in the early morning to Bosnia and lasted about 10 minutes. Malicious hackers even circumvented an international block that the school's local phone company Call One put in place with their long-distance provider Level 3, now called CenturyLink.
Someone could get in, reroute phone calls. You may not know about it.
Cybersecurity expert Nick Percoco says malicious hackers create computer programs that call random phone numbers looking for mailboxes with weak passwords. Once inside, they take control.
And the criminals control where those phone numbers, where those phone calls are going. And every time someone calls one of those phone numbers, they make money.
According to the FCC, cyber criminals typically target business phone systems, but caution that consumers with residential voicemail should also beware.
You may be good today, but that's not to say you're going to be secure tomorrow.
To reduce the risk, experts say choose a complex password and change it often, and disable call forwarding. If your landline is compromised, notify police and your phone provider. But chances are you'll still be on the hook for paying for bogus calls.
We've worked to get some credits, but still feel that these charges were fraudulent, and ultimately we feel that they should be removed.
Gardner Grade School says it's reconfigured its phone system and shut down remote voicemail access. Yet the dispute over their phone bill continues.
I've spent countless hours on this in the hopes that I could come up with a decent resolution.
The school switched local phone companies for an unrelated reason last summer, but still owes its old provider, Call One, $4,500. Call One has issued a partial credit, but says the school didn't take prompt action to protect its phone system. Meantime, the long-distance provider, CenturyLink, says that because Gardner School is not its direct customer, it could not comment further. The superintendent says other schools should know about potential phone attacks and be prepared. Chris Coffey, NBC5 investigates. Woodworking is one of the hobbies Joseph Cizon finds himself enjoying these days after spending 15 years in the military. The Bolingbrook native served as a medic, and his Army unit fought in the early years of the Iraq War.
We had rounds going off, still firing overhead while I'm moving patients back to cover and safety. It's a night that will always stay in my head.
While in Iraq, Cizon earned the Army Commendation Medal for bravery.
It was for going into a minefield to save some guys.
But right before deploying to Iraq, Cizon broke his neck in a car accident. Surgery repaired his injury, but he says the pain would not go away.
I had, unfortunately, prescription opioids that were prescribed for me to take for the pain.
It was a treatment that would nearly take over his life during his time in Iraq and the years that followed.
I had no muscular strength. I just wanted to sleep. had crazy hours. My weight changed. I wasn't myself. Mood swings.
At your highest level, how many opioids were you taking each month?
Like 360 tablets of methadone a month, 700 something of Percocet, upper amount. I mean, a month's supply of that.
In fact, the Department of Veterans Affairs says by 2012, nearly a quarter of its patients were receiving an opioid. But due to the drug's potential for addiction and overdoses, the VA says it now limits its prescribing nationwide. At Hines VA, just outside of Chicago, data shows 14% of the veterans who visited in 2012 were prescribed opioids. Now, that number is 9%.
We wanted to address this so that we don't have the menace of opioids.
Dr. Raj Uppal is director of Hines Pain Services, where veterans can manage their pain with treatments like meditation and acupuncture.
We have so many veterans who have been taken off opioids. They're productive. They're gainfully employed.
The drops are similar at Chicagoland's two other VA facilities, Lovell and Jesse Brown.
And stick one on there.
Cizon just celebrated his 38th birthday painkiller free. He credits VA doctors with introducing him to acupuncture.
Gave me a nice, good boost in my life that I needed and energy back, and I wasn't living with the pain day in, day out and letting it control me.
And he says staying focused on his hobbies helps keep the pain away.
I'm more sociable. I'm like a normal person in a way, so to speak.
The VA says 99% of its facilities have decreased opioid prescribing in the past 5 years. They've also referred vets to acupuncture providers. As far as any suggestions from Cizon, he says more education is needed. Chris Coffey, NBC5 investigates.
We need more police.
In April 1968, Chicago's West Side exploded. Rioting, looting, and fires erupted following simmering racial tensions ignited in part by the King assassination.
I understood the outrage and the fury that was behind what the looters were doing.
At the time, Justice Shelvin Hall was a 20-year-old college student. She had grown up on the West Side, her father a well-known reverend, activist, and friend to Dr. King.
Our concern was that it was not the most constructive way, nor the way that Dr. King, in all probability, would have liked for his followers to have reacted to his demise. He was a man of peace.
Okay, we'll give it to the police.
With riots lasting more than 48 hours, at least 9 Chicagoans were killed, 300 hurt, and more than 250 businesses and stores destroyed.
It was a nightmare. We drove through those streets, those that we could get through, and particularly on Madison.
Today, much of the area remains in ruins. The once bustling marketplace is gone, opportunity scarce.
And masses of folks on the west and the south side are abandoned and neglected. We should be embarrassed.
Denise Mason, who has lived in North Lawndale for the last 11 years, says the King legacy has not been upheld here.
I don't understand it. Everything that you're saying about that Dr. Martin Luther King fought for is not what we're getting. It's just not.